Hey friends, it's Lauren Taylor. I really appreciate you for stopping by and joining me in my craft room today. It's the last day of the month, so I have some Halloween-esque inspiration. I've colored in this adorable botanical science teacher from Crazy Dance from the Sassy Club. I've also die cut a box card from Pretty Pink Posh, and I use some green cardstock. This is from the Your Paper Insider Box 1, and I cut some scallops or some scalloped pieces from two different Sassy Club paper packs. I also cut an extra backing of my box card because I'm going to create a window. Now, you don't need to do this step. What I put behind my window, you could definitely just attach to the inside of the card, but I wanted it to look like there was a window, and my background, which will have the moon in it, I wanted it to look like it was peeking inside of the box card. So I'm creating a window by doing some partial die cutting with an arch die that I have, because otherwise it would cut completely through the bottom of this box card. And then I'm just taking my little mini paper trimmer here from Huffy Doodle and trimming off that bottom part so I have a nice frame, which will be again a window on the back of my box card. And this white paper will fit right behind it. I did it one size larger than the arch die that I used to create the window, so that way I wouldn't have to worry about centering anything perfectly because it's larger than the actual window, as you can see here. And that's going to get glued to that extra back piece that I cut out, and that way my box card has a nice solid backing. I'm going to be stenciling a moon, and I'm using the Moon Builder stencil from the Sassy Club. Now I wanted to distress ink my moon, obviously with the different layers in the moon builder, but I wanted to also add ink around my moon, and it didn't come with a solid circle, but that's no problem at all. I just trace it on some white copy paper, and I'm going to use that to be my moon, and then I will add ink around that. So that way I can have ink in my night sky as well as ink in my moon using that builder stencil. So I'm starting off with Stormy Sky. That's going to be the lightest color that will be touching my moon. So I'm adding that color first with a Dome Phone blender. After that, I'm going to jump into Chipped Sapphire, which is a darker blue with a more, I don't want to say purple tone, but definitely a more cooler tone to the blue. And then I am adding in Black Soot and just going back and forth between those colors until I'm happy with the blending between all three. So the light blue, the dark blue, and the black. Once that is done, I'm going to now work on building up my moon. So I'm going to take that circle and I'm going to try my best to leave just a tiny bit of that blue showing through the circle. Otherwise, there could be a white line if I didn't line up my stencil exactly. So overlapping my ink a little bit just helps avoid having that white line if you don't line up your stencils exactly. And for my moon, I'm starting with Lost Shadow, and I'm going to completely cover the whole moon in this color. And then I'm going to move over to the shadow part of the moon, and I'm bringing in Hickory Smoke and adding that color to what will be kind of the bottom part of my moon. Next, I have the little crater details, and for this, I'm actually going to bring out some stencil paste. This is Pearl White Stardust Butter from the Crafter's Workshop. It's very light. It dries clear almost and just really gives a nice, pretty, sparkly shine, which I thought would look really pretty on this moon. So just using a palette knife to put that through the stencil, and I love a good stencil reveal. So here is my moon. It is so pretty. I love it. And I'm going to set that aside to dry while I clean my stencil and my glass mat. So now I'm going to start working on assembling the box card. I forgot that oh my goodness, the Pretty Pink Posh box card folds really nicely. You don't really need a scoring tool because it has perforated cuts in it and it just folds so easily. I'm using some 1/4-inch double-sided adhesive tape from scrapbook.com to attach my pieces of the box card together. And then I just have a tape runner to attach the little scallop details to the front of my little stair stepping pieces here, as well as the sides of my box card. So I am attaching the first part of my box card, which will actually close up my box card into a box. And then I have one little shelf here that I'm going to put just behind that front piece. I didn't want it to be in the middle. I wanted it to be a little closer to the front of my box card. And I added some of this kind of tile looking piece because that's the part that my character is going to stand on, and I wanted it to look more like a flooring in her classroom rather than green plants everywhere like I'm putting in for the rest of the card, like that front panel and the two side panels. So I closed up my box card. It's looking really cute. You could see that it wasn't exactly center, it was a little closer to the front. And then using that same tape runner, I'm going to add both sides to the details of this box card. Now that those are attached, I thought I would get my sentiment ready, and I'm stamping the sentiment "You Grow Girl" from the same Sassy Club stamp set. And I have a piece of white cardstock, just a scrap, and I'm stamping it in black VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It's my favorite ink for stamping sentiments. And I'm going to use my little trimmer to trim down my sentiment. Now, I probably should have used a larger piece of paper because this took me a little while to cut out, but if I use my mint tape to hold it in place, I can easily just trim around my white paper. This one was not quite straight. I tried to stamp it nice and straight in the corner of that piece of scrap paper, but I missed a little. So I'm just trying to straighten out those two sides, and then I will go through and trim out the rest. Again, with a tiny little piece of paper like this, you can use some of your mint tape to help secure it to your little paper cutter, and that will just help from having to keep your fingers and trying to cut it very carefully, which I speak from experience trying to do. So I was looking at it against the green and I just felt like it was kind of boring. So I thought I would make a little frame out of this teal paper, which is from the same Your Paper Insider box number 1. And I'm just going to cut out a scrap, and I will use some wet glue to glue that to one of the corners of this piece of teal paper, giving it a nice little border around the left and bottom of my sentiment. And then I'll use my paper trimmer again to trim the top and right side, so that way I have again a nice little frame around my sentiment. And I definitely liked that better on the green. I felt like it just stood out a little more, and it kind of matched that little tile design that I have on my shelf piece of the box card behind my front. Using my grid mat, I'm trying my best to get that nice and centered, and then I'm going to grab my teacher and I'm going to glue her to the inside of the card. So again, she's going to be standing on kind of the tile area of my little shelf behind my sentiment. So I just need glue behind her little red boots and some of her pants, so that way it looks like she's standing in the middle, but I still wanted her to really pop in out of the card because she is what is the main feature of this card. And I love her little Venus flytrap looking plant that she's holding. So really just want to make her the star of this box card. Once that's glued down, I'm going to work on assembling the back of my box card. So my moon is dry. It's little areas that probably could use a little bit more time, but I'm an impatient crafter and it was dry enough. So I'm just going to use my wet glue to adhere this to the back piece that I cut out. Again, I cut this piece out of the same large die from the box card die set from Pretty Pink Posh, and I just trimmed off the side pieces. I used a scrap so that way I didn't, completely waste all of the cardstock when just trimming off the side pieces. So it was just little pieces I had to cut off. I'm using some foam adhesive. Those are 1/8 strips from scrapbook.com to adhere my backing to the box card. And again, I want it to look like a window. So having that little bit of elevation there, I think really does make it look like a window behind her and the moon peeking in from that night sky. I'm grabbing my upside down die also from the Sassy Club, and I'm going to cut quite a few little pieces, just those two dies there, out of some brighter green cardstock. And I have Lucky Clover Distress Oxide, and I'm just going to add a little bit of distressing to all those pieces. I wanted to darken them up a little bit, but also make sure they had a little bit of shadow and dimension to them so they didn't look so flat. And then after that, I'm going to just start gluing them in. I didn't really have an idea of what I was going to do with these at the time. As I was gluing, I was thinking to myself, I probably should have waited to glue down my teacher and my sentiment, but I was just excited to get them on the card. But that's okay. It ends up working out really well. And I'm just tucking and gluing these different pieces around the box card. So anywhere where my little vines are going to be adhered to a visible part of the card, so a front of the card box, I added glue behind it. And then anytime it was going to tuck behind one of my pieces, so one of those two little shelves on my box card, I would add glue to the front of my die cut, and that way it would adhere to the back side of the different shelf pieces of this box card. I added two little vines going up the back so it looks like they're climbing up the windowsill. And then I'm also going to do a little trimming to trim off anywhere where the vines would overlap around the side. And I'm just going to glue those as well to the front of the card. I just want it to look like a really busy kind of plant, as she is the botanical teacher. A nice little busy plant vine scene. While she's standing there in front of the moon in that window behind her. So I'm going to glue my last couple pieces of the vine here. So I'm gluing one more to the bottom right of the front panel of this box card. And then I'm going to take that last little piece and glue it behind my little shelf. So the second layer of my box card. So it looks like it's sticking up behind the teacher. And with that, that will finish off my card. I think it turned out really fun. I think this would be a really cute card for maybe someone who is a fan of this show, but also just maybe someone with a green thumb that would really enjoy kind of a fun little box card that they could set on their shelf. I hope you enjoyed this process. And if anything, I hope you learned a way you could use the Moon Builder Stencil from the Sassy Club. But I'm just loving box cards, and I think this card turned out super great. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!